So, hi. Great to still have so many amazing leaders in the room when we come to the exciting topics of fusion energy in the afternoon. So I think one topic that has been dominating throughout the whole day are the multi-challenges that we are currently in, especially at this industrial location of Germany. On the one side, we see that with the rising energy prices that we currently have and the limited supply of renewable energies, we see our industrial location of Germany at risk. Every day that I open the newspaper nowadays, there's the next announcement of chemical plant of BASF for ammoniac in Ludwigshafen being shut down, or steel plants, or copper production, and so on. So that is definitely one of the big challenges that we are currently facing. On the other side, we also see that electricity demand will actually rise. So no matter what study you look at, until 2050, electricity demand will either double or triple or be 4 times as much, but everybody is certain that there will be a lot more demand for electricity in the future. And that is obviously driven by decarbonization of industry, by electric vehicles, by heating pumps for our buildings, and so on. And I think Hildegard Müller just said in her talk that in the study that they did, 9 out of 10 people responded that the industrial location of Germany is not attractive because of the high electricity prices. So we need a lot more electricity. It needs to be green, it needs to be cheap, it needs to be reliable. And the answer to that could be fusion energy. So every day when we look up at the sky, and today is a pretty blue sky, we see the sun. The sun is fired by fusion processes. You could say that it's nature's choice of how to produce electricity or energy. So basically fusion processes are that you have 2 nuclei that you fuse together and then create a vast amount of energy. So it's basically really the opposite of fission. So we are fusing nuclei to create energy. And the great thing about it is, as was just said at the start, that it's a CO2-free energy source. It's safe, so there is no chain reaction risk, there's no long-lived radioactive waste. It's a very dense energy source, so it doesn't need a lot of space. On the size of a football field, you could create 1 gigawatt. And you can create the electricity 24/7 wherever you need it. So you could produce it next to the chemical plant, you can produce it next to a steel plant, or also next to a big city. So I come from Munich, and with 1 gigawatt, you can produce electricity for a town of the size of Munich. So that really could be a game changer in the electricity mix of the future. And now scientists have been trying to bring the sun to Earth for many years. 60 years of fusion research have been going on. And in the traditional fusion approaches, scientists have always tried doing that with big magnets. So the most prominent example of that is ITER in the south of France, where they have basically a donut-shaped metal thing that is filled with a plasma, and then they are heating it up to high temperatures for long period of times and strong magnets. That has achieved some progress. However, the approach that we are pursuing at Marble Fusion is a laser-based approach. It's based on cutting-edge laser technology. So the laser technology that is the basis for that was awarded with the Physics Nobel Prize in 2018, and now enables us to really use lasers to ignite the fuel. So in our case, we are using boron and hydrogen as the main parts of our fuel. And when that fuses through the laser, the end product is positively charged particles and heat. And positively charged particles you can then transfer to electricity via induction, for example, and heat with like the classical steam cycles and so on. And the nice thing about boron and hydrogen, it's available everywhere in the Earth. It's in the Earth's crust. There is enough supply for hundreds of thousands of years to power the humanity with electricity. So that could really be the game changer in the energy supply. So let me lead you a bit through the process. I mentioned that we use fast laser pulses. What you see here is that disk over there that is a few femtoseconds long. I always try to explain a femtosecond. If I would use a torch and put it on for 1 second from here, the light would go to the moon. So 1 second is from here to the moon. 1 femtosecond is through a tenth of my hair. And that is maybe a disk that is like 50 femtoseconds. So very, very short period of time, but it can deploy vast amounts of energy in that period of time. And then we are hitting nanostructured fuel rods. And what's happening then is that the laser creates such a pressure that you can compare with if you take the Eiffel Tower, turn it around and put it on the tip of my small finger, that pressure that I would have on my small finger would be comparable to the light pressure that this laser is putting on my fuel rods. So basically that is pushing away all the electrons, leaves me with the positively charged particles that then repel from each other and basically fly into their neighbors and fuse. And in a power plant, that would look a bit like that. So so what I just showed you, these pellets, they would be like micrometer size big. And in a power plant, you would inject them into a fusion chamber multiple times per second. Every time when one of these pellets is injected, the lasers hit them, fusion reactions start, and with the result of having positively charged particles and heat that then can be transferred into electricity. And we are already working on this power plant technology jointly with Siemens Energy, for example, on the lasers with Thales, because we are a strong believer that we have a very ambitious timeline. We want to build these power plants in 10 years. If we want to make this happen, we can only make it with strong partnerships, with strong industry players. That is why from day one, we started with technology development in parallel to physics validation. So then I always get the question, so why fusion now? Obviously, everybody has heard about fusion. I already heard about it when I studied physics, and everybody is saying like, hey, why should it be here now, right? And I think it's driven through multiple factors. On the one side, we have seen amazing scientific breakthroughs. So it was just mentioned that in December last year, scientists have shown for the first time ever at the Lawrence Livermore National Facility in the US, also laser-based facility, that they produced energy with fusion processes. So they got out more energy from a fusion reaction than they put in. The whole process was still highly inefficient that they took because they used 20 years old laser technology and so on. Their lasers can only shoot once per day. We are now developing laser technology that can shoot 10 times per second. So totally different laser technology, but the basic physics principles have been demonstrated and shown. And also on the magnetic side, we are seeing a huge progress with like the highest energy yield ever being demonstrated in December 21. And then if we look at all the underlying technologies that we need, a core driver for us is laser technology. And I just mentioned the Physics Nobel Prize of 2018. That really enables us now to do these very short, high laser impulses. But also on the material science, I need to build these long rods. Here I can build on a lot of things that have been pushed by the semiconductor industry over the past year. So that is something else that we can leverage now within our company. Computing power, these simulations that we are running need high performance computer clusters like would have been unthinkable of even like 5 years ago to conduct these simulations. And artificial intelligence we are now using for all the data that we produce during our experiments. We can also use some codes to just like analyze our data faster, get insights faster, do those iteration circuits a lot faster than we could have done even 5 years ago. And what we also see is like, given by all these momentums, that also investors are now more and more investing into fusion technology. So last year, 4.8 billion have been invested into private fusion companies. That's more than what was invested 20 years before that together. So, and these are big investors. Those are the big or high net worth investors like Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, and so on, but also the Googles, Shells, and Tiger Global, and so on. So the big funds in the US that are now heavily investing into fusion technology because they also have recognized that this will lead to fusion power plants in the next 10 years. And what we also see is that besides these private efforts, also the public sector is now massively supporting private fusion companies. Still a lot more in the US and the UK than here in Germany. So in the US, the budget for fusion is now at like 1.4 billion per year. In Germany, for a very long time, we didn't have any public support. Now in March, we actually got a support by the Sprint, Agentur für Sprunginnovation, so Agency for Disruptive Technology, that is now supporting us with our laser development. That was a super important and big step for us to also get some political support for our topic, but still a far way to go if I compare it to the efforts that I see, especially in the UK and the US. Also great news from the US from last Friday. They now have put together a regulatory framework in which they say very clearly that fusion will not be regulated like fission, but like particle accelerators. And particle accelerators can be built everywhere. There's basically no high regulatory hurdles for that. So that was also an amazing milestone for fusion. And now coming to Marvel Fusion, our company was formed 3.5 years ago. We are a team of 70 people nowadays in our companies. I always say I'm kind of the weird unicorn because I don't have a PhD or a Nobel Prize, as like half of our company has one. But we also truly believe in diversity and have more than 20 nations working in our companies, coming from Chile to Australia and everything in between. We have conducted more than 2,000 experiments till today, in which we have validated all of our core drivers. I mentioned earlier that partnerships are extremely important for us. Besides the industry partnerships, we also have partnerships with the leading science institutions around the globe to really tap on the best knowledge that is out there. I mentioned our timeline before. My ambition is to build power plants within the next 10 years. I know that this is super ambitious in the fusion space, but I also truly believe that the world needs fusion more than ever before, and it needs it as quickly as possible. I think what is nice is really that momentum that we are seeing. Out there are currently 40 private fusion companies, of which unfortunately 2/3 are in the US, but we also have a handful here in Europe. We are the best funded fusion company in the EU. We have received over 60 million in private funding, plus now the support by the government. So we are good equipped to make this happen. However, next big milestones for us is certainly to build our proof of concept plant. So far, we are still conducting all our experiments at existing laser facilities, and the next big step for us is really to build up our own infrastructure, show that everything works end to end, and that we can bring fusion to this planet as fast as possible. And I think that was my last slide.